Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy S22 and compare it against the Samsung Galaxy S23 and see which particular phone is the better one for you. Now, the thing I can definitely tell you is that when it comes down to both of these devices, the main thing you're going to have to remember is that the Samsung Galaxy S23 is a much better device than the Galaxy S22. I feel like when you look at these two phones, they both look kind of the same, but Samsung did a much better job with the Galaxy S23 than they did with the S22. So kind of keep that in mind. We'll take a look at the differences and everything like that between these two throughout this video, but keep in mind, these aren't the newest phones anymore. But if you want to pick up some phones that I would recommend buying this year, including, the S23, links will be down in the description below for the cheapest prices I find on Amazon. You can get them from there, and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these phones. The Samsung Galaxy S22 originally came out back in 2022, and this was one of those phones that Samsung had made, which was a pretty good phone, right? I feel like Samsung actually did a pretty good job with this type of device, and overall, if you were to go through and pick up a device, I feel like you would still get a decent type of experience from a phone like this. Maybe it's not the best phone in the world or anything, but the build quality of this phone was actually pretty good, and that was something that I actually did like a lot about Samsung. The display on the front was really nice. It was a 6.1-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It got 1300 nits of brightness, and for the most part, if you were going to look at a phone, this thing was actually a pretty good looking device for the most part, and that was something that I actually liked and preferred a lot. But it wasn't perfect, but the phone itself, the way it still felt like a pretty expensive phone, and that was always something that I actually liked a lot about these types of devices. Now, with that being said, with something like with the Samsung Galaxy S23, this is a better phone in almost every single way. This phone on the front was giving you a 6.1-inch dynamic AMOLED display, but this one was giving you 1750 nits of peak brightness. So that right there was also another big difference. So you were getting quite a bit of an improvement when it came down to that brightness side. And I feel like that right there was another cool thing that they kind of threw in here. So if I'm looking at a phone, I definitely do like having a phone that's going to be giving me that type of capability because it is going to be holding up a tad bit better from that particular situation. So again, it isn't necessarily the biggest deal in the world, but that was kind of a nice thing that they kind of threw in there within that type of device. Both phones were giving you USB Type-C ports at the bottom. They both were giving you a pretty good feeling phone. Everything felt good. On the back side, you were getting a triple camera setup on the Galaxy S22 and on the Galaxy S23. They both were giving you wireless charging, reverse wireless charging. You might be thinking to yourself that there is a lot of overlap here and a lot of similarity, but when you actually take a look, about behind the curtain, the biggest differences kind of came internally. But at least from the exterior, they both probably felt more similar than not. The only big difference you'd be able to tell whether you have an S22 or an S23 is when you take a look at the camera on the backside, you'll see that there's a little indent on the Galaxy S22 in the top left corner. The camera kind of has like this camera bump to it. The S23 does not have a bump, it's completely flush. So some people might actually prefer that on the S23 or S22. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. When it comes down to the price tag right now, the Galaxy S23 cost about $251 on Amazon. The Galaxy S22 costs about $187. So once again, it really is just dependent on which way you kind of want to look at your device and buy it. But the price tag is really only $70 to $80, between these two on Amazon. And in some cases, you could probably negotiate the price between these two, even if you buy somewhere else. So that might just be another thing to kind of keep in mind there from that particular side as well. When it comes down to their cameras, this is also something similar. They both have triple camera setups on the backside, and they're both almost the exact same type of camera lenses. So you're both getting 50 megapixel wide, 10 megapixel telephoto, and then a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera. And on the front side, you're getting a 10 megapixel wide angle camera on the S22, where you're getting a 12 megapixel wide angle camera on the S23. So there's just an ever so slightly little bit of difference between these two devices, and that is also just another one of those funny things kind of going on here, because when you take a look at both, you are getting very similar types of layouts, but again, you're going to have to remember that the Galaxy S23 is the newer one. A lot of the post-processing, a lot of the image post-processing might be better on the Galaxy S23. But with that being said, I still think with the Galaxy S22, this type of device is still giving you an overall pretty good type of experience. is a good camera, and I would say the Galaxy S23 is also a good camera. So it just kind of is dependent on which way you kind of want to go. But at least from what I can tell, there isn't like these like massive differences in these camera lenses. But again, if you had to go through and get a better type of camera, it would probably be within something like a Galaxy S23. Now, on top of that, another important thing to keep in mind here too is software longevity. Right now, the Samsung Galaxy S23 is going to be the phone that is going to be lasting for a longer period of time rather than something like a Samsung Galaxy S22. So if you are wanting the better, longer lasting device, it's going to have to be from something like a Samsung Galaxy S23. So this one is, the newer one. It's going to be giving you more software updates, but it's only going to be lasting about 1 year newer than the Galaxy S22. So between these two devices, from what we can tell, Samsung overall, I guess, really did focus in on, the Samsung Galaxy S24 and above. Those ones ended up getting probably the longest lifespan support as far as we can tell. But with something like the Samsung Galaxy S22, this one is still basically kind of supported with software, but it's going to be ending fairly soon. The S23 is going to be the main focus as well as the S24. When it comes down to the battery life, the Galaxy S23 is going to be giving you that 3900 mAh battery. The S22 is going to be 3700 mAh battery. So when it comes down to this side, this is also another important thing to keep in mind here as well, because the battery life inside of the Samsung Galaxy S22 is probably going to be a little bit of a better experience than on the Galaxy S23. But it wasn't just the battery life or the battery size that made the big difference. A really big thing that Samsung did here was give us a way better chipset. The Galaxy S22 had some issues with throttling and the overall type of performance. It was giving you the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset with 8GB of RAM, whereas on the Galaxy S23, that phone was actually giving you the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset with 8GB of RAM. And that one was a significantly better performing chipset inside of that phone than the Galaxy S22. So the S22 to the S23 was quite a bit of a jump, and that was something that was actually a super important thing to keep in mind here, because when it originally came out, we weren't really too sure which way the phone was going to go, because apparently for a lot of people the S22's performance just really wasn't that great. Although my performance wasn't terrible, that was always something that was kind of going on there with something like a Samsung Galaxy S22. But luckily for us, with the Galaxy S23, Samsung did end up kind of fixing a lot of those issues, and that was something that was very, very important that we ended up kind of experiencing there. So to kind of sum up this whole entire video, what I definitely will tell you is that if you're going to go through and pick up a device, I definitely do think something like a Samsung Galaxy S23 is a way better device here in almost every single way than the Galaxy S22. And if I'm going to go through and pick up a device, it definitely makes a lot more sense to buy something like an S23 over an S22. But with that being said, I still think maybe there's a reason to buy an S22. If you're not really too worried about the performance and stuff, then go for it. But the phone is already kind of almost done getting software support. So I genuinely do think it makes a lot more sense to go through and buy something like a Samsung Galaxy S23 in this case, rather than buying an S22. And it really is that big of a difference. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.